video, and in today's video I'll be discussing each party's best chance to win the nomination for president, or not to win the nomination, to become president of the United States. Each party's best chances in 2024. So we're going to start with the Democrats. As you can see, I have a lot of these target states labeled. A lot of these states that are not typically safe states, I'm just going to label as safe. Minnesota, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire. None of these are typically safe. Iowa, or Ohio, Iowa, South Carolina, Texas, Kansas, sometimes Missouri and whatnot. But we're not going to talk about any of those except for Texas and maybe Ohio, at least for the Democrats. So yeah, let's get started. So Kamala Harris starts out with 223, Ted Cruz at 189, and this is once again the best case scenario for Democrats, or at least in this one, or not. I don't want to say the best case scenario, but their easiest path to the White House, and obviously they would want to run against a candidate that can win against. I think Kamala Harris could beat Ted Cruz, so I'm gonna go throw Ted Cruz in there, and when we get to the Republicans, you'll see which candidates I have. Anyway, so the first state that I'm gonna talk about, is Nevada. It's voted with Democrats by 2.4%. Catherine Cortez Masto won her election by 2.4%. Joe Biden won here by 2.4%. Hillary Clinton won here by 2.4%. I think they'll be about 2.4%. Not exactly 2.4%. I think they'll be a little crazy if it were to vote by 2.4%. For 4 elections. I think it'll probably be a lean margin. I think Democrats will probably do a little bit better here, but I think it'll still be like 3%. I think that this state is one of the truer swing states. Well, I don't want to say a swing state because it doesn't really swing, but it's still a really competitive margin, and it is definitely a swing state. Sorry about that. Anyways, so Nevada, definitely a swing state. That I think that Kamala Harris will probably target. One will probably win. Now, next thing I want to take a look at is Arizona. Joe Biden did pretty well here. Not pretty well. He won by 0.3. He won here. But we've seen Democrats, even in 2018 and 2020, win by larger margins. Mark Kelly won by, I believe, about 2%. And Kristen Sinema, I believe, won by about 3%. We've seen Democrats win here by lean margins. I think that'll probably be a lean margin. Probably closer to like 2.5%-ish. But I think that she will probably win there. Next state, okay, let's talk about it. Michigan. I think this will probably be like a lean Democratic state. And what is the state that Joe Biden won by? He won it by a little less than 3%. Trump, barely won it. He won it by less than a quarter of a percentage point. If you do the math, it actually shifted by about 3% to the left. So it's, I think it'll probably vote blue. With Kamala Harris, it'll probably be a tighter margin, probably more like 1 or 2% as opposed to 3%. This is another state like Nevada that I'll sing on the truer swing states. Well, Arizona as well, I guess. These states that I have highlighted in yellow, these are, actually I'm going to go make these likely just because I'm talking about them. But these are some of the more like truer swing states in our politics. So I think that the next easiest state for her to win is the state of Michigan. Now, we look at these states, and we talk about which one would be easier for her to win. So Joe Biden won 3 of them. He won Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. I'm going to go say it. Pennsylvania, probably the easiest state for her to win. Well, Pennsylvania or Georgia. These two are they're very similar in how they, or not how they vote. But I think right now in their political standing, they're very similar. Pennsylvania voted by about 1.2% for Joe Biden. Georgia voted by about 0.2%. But Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff are expected to do better than Joe Biden did in Georgia. Honestly, better than he did in Pennsylvania. I think that a lot of that was because of no split ticketing. And I think that the fact that Kelly Loeffler was a very disliked candidate, plus the fact that there was little to no split ticket voting, could have resulted in the large victory for Jon Ossoff. But it also could have just been stimulus checks with David Perdue. I think that'll be a smaller victory than 1.5%. I think it'll probably be more like I think it'll be between or maybe 1.5. I think it'll probably be between like 0.8 and 1.3%. But something in that general area, I think Georgia will probably vote in. I think that with Kamala Harris though, and turnout continuing to raise, like we saw Obviously higher minority turnout than in other elections in Georgia, but in the runoffs, especially, we saw the I'm pretty sure it was lower turnout than the regular election. In some counties, it was higher turnout, but we saw a lot of these minority voters getting a larger share of the electorate than they did before, and what a lot of these minority voters had in this runoff was the share of the electorate that they had was um, comparable to the share of the, or comparable, whatever, to the share of the electorate, or to the share of the population that they got. Because black voters get about 32% of the population, but like 28 or 30% of the electorate. They got that little extra 2% in this type of state. Also, we saw lower white turnout by a couple percentage points. In a state that is as close as Georgia, for Democrats to be able to get 2% higher turnout for the black vote, which is essentially 2%. Oh well, now kind of, I don't know, but it's essentially like Democrats win almost 90% of the black vote, so that's really good for Democrats. And white turnout was down to basically white turnout was similar to the share of the electorate that white voters have. I think that if this trend continues, it'll probably be a 1.5, 1.3-ish% victory for Democrats in Georgia. So at this point, it's either Georgia or Pennsylvania. Now, a few states I want to talk about. First off, which of these two? Let's talk about Wisconsin first. Joe Biden won here by 0.6%, and then Donald Trump won here by 0.8%. So Donald Trump actually won here by a larger margin than Joe Biden. If you do the math, Donald Trump, if you were to average it, he would win by, I believe, 0.1%, which is not good for Democrats. I think that it will probably vote red in 2024, especially if Kamala Harris is the candidate. And if it's against Ted Cruz, it might be a little smaller. But I think it'll probably be a very narrow Republican victory in 2024. So I'm going to continue to label this as a target right now. But I do think that Republicans will probably win there. Now, these final two, let's talk about North Carolina first. I think that Democrats have a really good chance at winning North Carolina. The thing about North Carolina, it was weird because if you look at when Obama carried the state in 2008, and you look at today's numbers, I believe that white turnout was actually down in North Carolina and black turnout was actually up compared to Obama. But I don't remember entirely because I haven't looked at it in a while, but I believe it was Obama did better among white voters and better among black voters. And in a state that's this close, that could mean like a victory in the state. I think that if Democrats can, or as the state also grows, I think as the state grows, or as it grows in minority population, and then Democrats, if Democrats can keep that minority turnout high, if they can exceed it above what share of the population that they have, they're almost certainly going to win, especially if they do marginally well with white voters, and they'll probably win. But if they can keep, if the state's minority population continues to grow, and they continue to have the minority voters continue to have a share of the electorate that they have and a share of the population, and Democrats continue to do well in the suburbs, I think that North Carolina will probably be a very narrow 0.2% Democratic state. It'll be incredibly close, but I think that it will maybe be a Democratic state. It's honestly, in my opinion, North Carolina and Wisconsin are two of the biggest toss-ups of 2024. But right now, I just wanted to talk about North Carolina. Next up, the state of Florida. I think Kamala Harris could actually do pretty well there. I don't think there will be a lean Republican state again. Well, maybe very low leans. But I think there's a decent chance that it's a high tilt, like 0.9, 0.8% for Kamala Harris as opposed to 3.3, or for Ted Cruz as opposed to 3.3%. I still think that Ted Cruz would win there, but I think it'll be a lot more competitive. And if Kamala Harris can win back the Hispanic and Latino vote in Florida, or I say win it back, if she can do better among the Hispanic and Latino vote in Florida and do a lot better in Miami-Dade, then she can win it back. I think that she could do better in Miami-Dade than Joe Biden did. I think that she would probably have similar minority, or her numbers among minorities would probably be similar to Hillary Clinton's. But it's just whether or not she can carry, or at least do well in the elderly white vote in Florida. Because if she can, then the state of Florida will almost certainly either be a Democratic state or be an incredibly competitive state. But I don't necessarily think that she will do incredible among the older white vote. I think that she can do decent. I don't think she'll do quite as well as Joe Biden. which is why I think it's going to be still a conservative state. And now the final state I want to look at is the state of Texas. I mean, like, Kamala Harris were to be able to focus all of her efforts into Texas, I think that if she were to be able to win back that Hispanic and Latino vote, because Democrats did awful among the Hispanic and Latino vote in Texas. Like, they did absolutely abysmal. It was terrible. They were awful among the Hispanic and Latino vote. If they can do better among that vote, then they can they would have to do better among the Hispanic and Latino vote. They would also have to raise Hispanic and Latino turnout. If you look at Texas, white voters have 19% have a 19% larger share of the electorate than they do a share of the population. If Democrats can get a larger share, if they can win back the Hispanic and Latino vote in margins that Beto O'Rourke and Hillary Clinton were winning it with, which Kamala Harris can do, I think that she can definitely do that. They can do if they can raise the turnout, get white turnout, not even 19% down, but just a little bit down, then they can probably do well. And then do well among white suburban voters, then Texas, I think, would probably be a Democratic state. And here's the thing. If Texas were a Democratic state, and I talked about this the other day, if Texas were a Democratic state, I think that it would be incredible for Democrats because it'll be against Ted Cruz, so she would probably have trouble doing that. But if it were, should Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia fall, Arizona, they still win with Texas. It would favor them heavily, which is why I think that Democrats could focus a lot of their efforts into the state of Texas. I don't think that they should. I think that Texas should definitely be a target. I'll say that. Texas needs to be a target state for them. If they want to really get Texas flipped, they need to make this into a target state, which I think it will be. I don't think they need to focus all their efforts into Texas because it's not liberal enough to the point where they can focus all their efforts in the state, and like they need some sort of safety net. And while Texas is obviously a competitive state, I don't think that it's going to be like the type of state where if they campaign there a lot, it's like shoo-in victory. Some states, if you campaign there a lot, it can be a shoo-in victory. Trying to think. Maybe North Carolina, I don't know. If Joe Biden had campaigned in North Carolina, he would have won that state. I don't think that he would have lost had he campaigned there. But a lot of states, you don't necessarily, if you were to campaign there a lot, you would probably do well. Texas, or at least from the standpoint of a Democrat, if they want to be able to win Texas, they need to, I think they need to wait. In 2028, maybe, they could put all their efforts into Texas and win because they would probably have a bluer Georgia, a bluer Arizona, probably a bluer North Carolina, to be honest. So they could focus a lot more of their efforts into Texas. I don't think that right now that's a very smart idea. Now on to the Republicans. I think that for the Republicans to get to do well, Democrats would need to be running Elizabeth Warren. I don't think that she would do too well. She might do all right, but I don't think she would do like incredibly well. And for Republicans, they need to run someone like Josh Hawley or Dan Crenshaw, someone who is who can tap in to that Trump base, but can also tap into the the more moderate traditional Republican base. Now, for the Republicans, what is the easiest path to victory? We're going to start with Florida. Donald Trump won here by 3.3%, especially with a candidate like Elizabeth Warren, who's not going to do too great. I think that Republicans could probably win Florida by smaller margins. I think they would win it by a little bit smaller margins. Well, actually, if someone was like Josh Hawley or Dan Crenshaw was there, they could probably win it by a little bit larger if they're against a candidate who's not great. Because if they can tap into that older white vote and into that more moderate vote, they could probably win there. So I don't know, but I definitely think that they would win there. North Carolina, they could probably win there. Elizabeth Warren might be able to fire up some of that base in North Carolina. But if Republicans can do decent in the suburbs and do well among the white rural voters, now they've almost maxed out their white rural support. But if they can do well among those white rural voters and keep white turnout up, then they are probably going to win in North Carolina. Now they're at 236. These are every state that Trump won All these states are the states that Trump won. So now we're gonna start on states that Trump lost. First off, Wisconsin. Now I'm just explaining to you. I was talking about it earlier. Why I thought that it was tilt red, especially if someone like Josh Hawley or Dan Crenshaw's running against someone like Elizabeth Warren. I think that Wisconsin's definitely going to be a conservative state, maybe even by lean margins. I don't know. Like a low lean could make sense in Wisconsin if Republicans were to win, or if Republicans were to run. If this were basically the matchup, it could probably be a lean red Wisconsin. I think it would probably be like something like 0.8 ish, like about actually maybe a little bit better than how Trump did in 2016, because Elizabeth Warren, I think would probably do a little bit, would probably do about as bad as Hillary Clinton, and then Josh Hawley and Dan Crenshaw could probably do a little bit better than Trump. I don't know. It depends on how a lot of these voters view them, because they might view them as Trumpism, or they might like Trumpism without Trump and like them, or they might think that they're not as exciting as Trump and not vote for him. Now the next state, the state of Georgia. I don't think that this will vote red. I think there's a good chance that it doesn't, but it could. You never know. I think that if Republicans were to be able to raise white turnout again, and they would have to raise it high and keep black turnout low, then they could win there. I honestly think that the chances of them keeping black turnout low in the state of Georgia are not very good. So I still don't think that it will vote red. In fact, I'm going to go label this as a target. But just how they could win Georgia. But in the state of Pennsylvania, the state's shifting to the right. It's getting wider. And if they can keep that Philadelphia turnout low, which I think is probably a little bit more likely, although Elizabeth Warren might be able to fire up a lot of those voters. But if they can do well among white suburban voters, which they traditionally did do well among, like obviously there was the 2020 suburban revolt, but if they can do well among white suburban voters, then they can probably win the state of Pennsylvania, as long as they keep white turnout incredibly high, which I think could happen. I don't know. I'm gonna label Pennsylvania as a Republican state for this. Now, of these states, I've already talked about Georgia. I've already talked about a lot of these states. I don't think that any of these states would actually vote red. I'm just going to say that. Any of these 4 remaining states. Well, I think that Georgia might, but I've already talked about Georgia. But I think that of these states, Michigan is probably the most likely to vote red. It voted the farthest to the left of the Rust Belt in both 2016 and 2020. But when I say the Rust Belt, I mean Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But like at least like when I said it right then, it voted to the farthest to the left in both 2016 and 2020. So I think that I don't think this is incredibly likely, but I do think that if Josh Hawley and Dan Crenshaw can do very well among that white moderate base, I think that they could probably win the state of Michigan. I don't think it'll be by. I think they would very narrowly win it. Maybe even do worse. Actually, well, against Elizabeth Warren, maybe a little bit better, but very similar to how Trump did in 2016, incredibly tight margins. But I don't think that Michigan would be too large of a margin. And I don't think that Nevada or Arizona are going to vote red, and Georgia, probably not. I don't know. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video whenever that may be. Bye!